Hi, my name's Greg Tink. I'm a licensed plumber with 30 years experience in the plumbing industry. Today we're going to be installing a rainwater harvesting system with two different applications. The first one will be for rainwater outside on the garden, and the second one will be for rainwater inside the family home. First of all, we're going to make sure our base is level, which it is, it's spot on. And then we'll go and get some sand to finish it off. And by the way, this sand really needs to be compacted before we put our rainwater tank in position. I'm just fitting the filter now to the first flush diverter. This needs to be maintained by the householder about every 6 months. It needs to be taken out and rinsed and cleaned, so the first flush diverter will keep working. Okay, we've finished the installation of our inlet pipework. We've got our leaf diverter up the top here, followed by our first flush diverter, our inlet to our tank. Then we've got our overflow down to the storm water drain. All that pipe work is now complete. Now let's move on to the installation of the pump and the associated pipe work. Okay, before we fit our Davey water pump and our thorium constant flow controller, we need to check that our location is correct. Our base is firm and flat. It is a good location because it's out of the weather as best as possible. It's well drained. Before we fit our pump and our pressure controller, we need to make sure that our two packaging bungs are removed out of the pump. All Davey products are water tested in the factory. The idea of the bungs is to keep water away from the packaging during transport. We also need to check that our thorium has the O-ring already fitted, which it should be. Make sure that it's not creased, and then we can fit the two units together. Like so. Then we can mount our pump. When you're locating the pump, make sure there's plenty of air supply behind the pump for the cooling fan within the motor of the pump. All our pipe work's complete now, but before we can use the pump, we must make sure that there's some water in the tank. We've already put some water in the tank. We need to open the valve, and then we need to open the cap on the priming port. Make sure there's water in the pump in the chamber, which there is. I can see it dripping out now. I'll tighten up the cap again till it's sealed. After that, we're ready to water the garden with our new system. Okay, we're ready to plug our pump in. Turn our power supply on. The pump should start. We can then turn on the tap. And we're ready to use our system. Away it goes. Let's have a look at using rainwater inside the family home using the Rainbank. It's ideal for flushing toilets with and also supplying water to the laundry. Some of your customers may also want to drink that water. The installation of the Rainbank is identical to the garden watering pump we showed earlier in regards to the base, the pipework and the valve setup. However, the location is very important in this case because late night toilet visits and pump starts could disturb neighbours. Later on, I'll show you how to install a submersible pump in the tank to eliminate noise and save space. I've leapt ahead and installed the pump and controller. Now I'd like to take you through some important points about the installation. make sure you have an isolation valve between the water supply and the pump. Make sure the pipework is adequately sized for sufficient flow. Make sure that you use at least 20mm pipework on the Rainbank, both on the inlet and outlet side. You have disconnection points for servicing if required in the future, and you also have an isolation valve on the potable water supply to the Rainbank. Our installation has a leaf diverter, a first flush diverter, as well as a fine mesh on the inlet to the water tank. If you're retrofitting a Rainbank and it does not have these in place, Davey recommend that you fit an inline filter between the pump and the Rainbank. Before we complete our installation, the last thing we need to do is install a float switch. It's very important to note that the float switch must be at least 40mm above the top of the outlet valve on the tank. It must be also 40mm above the suction line inlet of the pump. Now that our plumbing is complete, we need to go through a simple check process. Make sure there is water in the tank. Make sure the valve between the tank and the pump is turned on. Make sure the valve on our potable water supply is open. Then we need to connect our pump. Okay, now that we're all connected and their power is turned on, what we need to do is run the system, get air through and out of the system, make sure it's all been expelled correctly, which we'll do that now. Would you turn the garden tap on, please? Now that the tap connected to the system has been turned on, the pump should start. The pump has started and is running now. We need to let that run for a few moments to clear all the air out. Once that's done, we'll now turn off the potable water supply. The pump should continue to run, and it is. Would you turn off the garden supply, please? Thank you. I'll turn on the potable water supply. Now that completes the installation and the commissioning. What we're going to show you now is the fitting of another type of float switch. A lot of people don't want to drill a hole in the side of the tank. There is another way you can do it, and that is by fitting a top entry float switch, which we're going to show you now. Make sure you set your weight approximately 100mm above the float. Suspend the float inside the tank, and so it's approximately 40mm above the outlet valve on the tank. Use your cable gland to set the height of the float. Once this has been done, it can be suspended inside the tank and connected to the pump. As I mentioned earlier, we're now going to show you the installation of a submersible pump. This submersible pump has a float switch already fitted. It's a real time saver. If you are using a submersible pump with a Rainbank, you need to make sure that the Rainbank is an S model. Another accessory I'm going to show you is the fitting of a submersible inlet, which bolts onto the bottom of your submersible pump if you wish. Simply unscrew the 4 screws at the base of the submerged pump and remove the base and strainer. Drop the pump into the plastic base and refit the 4 screws, and you're ready to go. That completes the installation of the floating inlet to the submerged pump. We can now go ahead and install our submerged pump into our water tank. Never use an electrical cable to raise or lower a submersible pump. Always use a good quality chain or heavy duty rope that won't rot underwater. The Rainbank can be fitted to the wall via a bracketing system. It can be fitted into a cabinet, or it can be fitted into a plate in the top of the rainwater tank, such as this one here. Just make sure all openings into the rainwater tank are mosquito proof. All the pipework connections are identical to the Rainbank installation we've shown previously. Before it rains, make sure you fit your bleed line to your first flush diverter. That completes the installation of the Davey Rainbank. Thanks for watching, and remember, Davey have put all these tips into their instruction booklet, and they also have an excellent call centre for any further help that you may need. Davey recommend that in all plumbing works, you must observe current occupational health and safety requirements. Davey also recommend that you observe all current plumbing and statutory requirements in the installation of all pipework and fittings.